the choice of wealth. Once upon a time, in the quiet village of Obabi, there lived a humble man named Dyke. He wasn't wealthy, but his heart was full, and his family was the source of his happiness. Dyke was a farmer, though he didn't own a farm. Instead, he worked tirelessly on the lands of others, ensuring that his wife and children never lacked what they needed. His wife, Ola, was a beautiful and cheerful woman who sold vegetables at the village market. Every morning, she packed her goods with a smile, ready to support the family. Dyke and Ola had 3 children, 2 strong sons and a lovely daughter named Ada. Their household was filled with joy, even though they didn't have much. In the evenings, after long hours under the sun, Dyke would return home tired but content. His children would rush to hug him, and Ola would serve him a warm meal. Laughter filled their small home as they shared stories, proving that true wealth lies not in riches but in the love of family. Though Dyke was content with his life, he had many friends in the village who were wealthier than him. Over time, these friends began to distance themselves. They no longer invited him to gatherings or shared meals, simply because Dyke wasn't as rich as they were. Still, Dyke would remind himself, "My family is what truly matters." One day, the village held a grand festival, and Dyke decided to attend. Upon arriving, he saw his old friends laughing and enjoying themselves. At first, they welcomed him warmly, and Dyke was happy to join them. But after the meal, one of his friends stood up and said, "Dyke, since you aren't as rich as we are, why don't you clean up the plates?" Dyke was stunned. He looked at them and said, "We are all friends, and I am older than you. Why should I be treated this way just because I don't have much?" His friends laughed cruelly, and one replied, "If you don't, we'll tell the host you didn't pay for your meal." Humiliated, Dyke had no choice but to clean the plates. Afterward, he left the gathering, walking home with his head low. When he reached home, Ola noticed his sadness. "What happened, Dyke?" she asked. He sighed and explained the incident. But despite the hurt, he reminded himself, "I will continue to do my best for you and the children." He would never let their happiness be shaken by his friends' cruel treatment. Though Dyke worked hard every day, he never owned a farm of his own. He worked from dawn to dusk under the hot sun, planting and harvesting for others. Often, his employers would delay his payment, asking him to return the next day. But when he returned, they would make excuses. Dyke's wealthier friends began taking advantage of his situation, assigning him menial tasks like washing their clothes and cleaning their homes. Dyke swallowed his pride, doing whatever he could to provide for his family. One day, Dyke asked a friend for a small loan to buy food. His friend laughed and said, "If you want money, clean my house first." Though he felt humiliated, Dyke agreed, spending the entire day scrubbing floors and washing clothes. At the end of the day, his friend gave him a small sum, far less than what he had earned, but Dyke took it without complaint. Another time, Dyke worked a full day on a farm, toiling under the sun from sunrise to sunset. When it was time to collect his payment, his employer said, "I don't have the money right now. Come back next week." Though frustrated, Dyke accepted it, knowing he had to provide for his family. Despite the hardships, Dyke never gave up. Every morning, he woke before the first light and worked hard, knowing his family depended on him. His dedication was unwavering, even when others treated him unfairly. The harvest season approached, and Dyke saw an opportunity to earn more. He decided to approach Chief Nofa, the wealthiest man in Enugu, who owned the largest farm in the area. "Good morning, Chief Nofa," Dyke greeted him respectfully. "I would like to help with the harvest on your farm. My 2 sons can assist as well." Chief Nofa, sizing Dyke up, nodded and said, "Very well. You may start tomorrow." The following day, Dyke and his 2 sons woke up before the break of dawn. With renewed energy, they made their way to Chief Nofa's large farm. The farm was vast, stretching farther than the eye could see. As soon as they arrived, they started working tirelessly under the blazing sun, picking crops and packing them into large sacks. The work was tough, and even when the rain poured heavily, they continued, determined to complete the harvest. Dyke's sons were hardworking like their father. Together, the 3 of them formed an unstoppable team, working from morning till night, their hands rough from labor and their backs aching. But none of them complained. They knew that the fruits of their labor would bring food to the table and happiness to their family. Days passed, and the harvest was finally complete. Dyke and his sons had neatly packed the crops into sacks and stored them in Chief Norfa's barn. Exhausted but satisfied, Dyke wiped the sweat from his brow and turned to his sons. "We did it," he said proudly. "Let's go to Chief Norfa and collect our payment." Dyke approached Chief Norfa with confidence. "Chief, we have finished the harvest. Can we please receive our payment?" he asked respectfully. The chief nodded and handed Dyke a small portion of the agreed amount. "Here is 1/3 of what I owe you. Come back tomorrow for the rest," Chief Norfa said. Dyke was surprised. The chief had never asked him to return for payment before, but he accepted the money and thanked him. When Dyke returned home, he handed some of the money to Ola. "Prepare a good meal for the children tonight," he said, smiling. "They deserve it after all their hard work." That night, they enjoyed a delicious meal, but Ola noticed that Dyke wasn't himself. "Dyke, why do you seem worried?" she asked. Dyke sighed and replied, "Chief Norfa didn't pay me fully today. He asked me to return tomorrow for the rest. I'm worried because this has never happened before." Ola hugged him and reassured him, "Don't worry, Dyke. You've worked hard, and everything will be fine." Despite his concerns, Dyke tried to enjoy the evening with his family. However, the thought of returning to Chief Norfa weighed heavily on his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The next day, Dyke returned to the chief's house, hoping to collect the rest of his payment. When Dyke arrived at Chief Norfa's grand house, the chief greeted him warmly. "Oh, Dyke, welcome back. Come, sit with me," the chief said, gesturing toward a table laden with food and drink. Dyke hesitated but sat down. As the chief's mate served him, Dyke felt strange unease. It was unusual for Chief Norfa to show such hospitality. Why is he being so kind? Dyke thought to himself. After the meal, Chief Norfa leaned back and said, "Dyke, you have worked hard all your life. I admire your dedication. But I have an opportunity for you, one that will make you wealthy without all this hard labor." Dyke's heart raced at the chief's words. "What do you mean, Chief?" he asked cautiously. Chief Norfa smiled and replied, "There's a way for you to become rich, but it involves a small ritual. Don't worry, no harm will come to anyone. You are getting older, Dyke, and soon you won't be able to work in the fields like you do now. Think about your future, about your family's future." Dyke felt a chill run down his spine. "A ritual?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "What kind of ritual?" Chief Norfa reached into his robe and pulled out a large bundle of money. He handed it to Dyke and said, "Here, take this. It's 10 times what I owe you. Think of it as a gift, a taste of what could be yours if you agreed to the ritual. There's no rush to decide." Dyke stared at the bundle of money in disbelief. He had never seen so much money in his life. His hands trembled as he accepted it. "Thank you, Chief," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'll think about your offer and let you know my decision." As Dyke walked home, the weight of the money felt heavy in his hands. His mind was filled with conflicting thoughts. The offer was tempting, riches beyond his wildest dreams, but the idea of a ritual frightened him. When he arrived home, Ola immediately noticed the bundle of money in his hands. "Dyke, where did you get all this money?" she asked, her eyes wide with surprise. Dyke sighed and explained everything that had happened. "Chief Norfa gave me this money and offered me a chance to become wealthy without working hard. He said it involves a ritual, but no one will be harmed. I don't know what to do, Ola. It's so much money, and it could change our lives forever." Ola listened carefully, her expression filled with concern. "Dyke, this offer sounds too good to be true," she said softly. "We have always lived honestly and worked hard for what we have. Be careful. Easy riches can bring great trouble." Dyke nodded, knowing his wife was right. "I'll think about it carefully," he promised. we won't rush into anything. That night, Dyke lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The bundle of money was hidden safely, but his mind was anything but peaceful. The chief's offer played over and over in his head. Could it really be that easy to become wealthy? Or was there a hidden danger he wasn't seeing? Over the next few days, Dyke wrestled with his decision. The bundle of money was a constant reminder of the wealth that could be his. He thought about his family and about how their lives could change for the better. He thought about the struggles they had faced and the temptations of an easy life. One evening, as the sun set over Obabi, Dyke made up his mind. He decided to accept Chief Norfa's offer, hoping it would bring prosperity to his family. He sat down with Ola and said, "I've made my decision. Tomorrow, I will go to the forest edge and meet the old man for the ritual." Ola's face filled with worry as she listened to Dyke. "Dyke, please be careful," she said, her voice trembling with concern. "We don't know what this ritual really involves. Promise me you'll come back safely. Our family's happiness means more than wealth." Dyke hugged her tightly and promised, "I'll come back safe. This is for our future, for the children." The next morning, Dyke made his way to the edge of the forest, where Chief Norfa had told him to meet the old man. The tree stood tall and thick, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper secrets. Dyke's heart raced as he approached a small hut hidden deep in the forest. An old man with a long white beard and piercing eyes stood at the entrance, waiting for him. "Oh, Dyke," the old man said in a deep, gravelly voice. "Chief Norfa told me you would come. Are you ready for the ritual?" Dyke nodded, though his heart pounded with fear. "Yes, I am ready," he replied, his voice shaky. The old man led Dyke to a clearing in the forest. In the center of the clearing was a circle of stones, with strange symbols etched into the ground. The old man began to chant in a low, rhythmic voice. Dyke stood in the circle, feeling a mixture of fear and anticipation. The old man approached him with a bowl of dark oil and said, "This ritual will grant you wealth without harm. Rub this oil on your body, and the gods will bless you." Dyke took the oil with trembling hands and began to rub it onto his skin. As Dyke applied the oil, a strange warmth spread through his body. The old man continued his chanting, his voice filling the air with an eerie presence. When Dyke finished, the old man placed his hands on Dyke's head and said, "You have been chosen. The gods will grant you riches, but remember, there is always a price to pay. Be wise and use your wealth for good." With those words, the ritual was complete. The old man handed Dyke a small pouch filled with gold coins. "This is just the beginning," he said. "More wealth will come to you. Go now and take care of your family." Dyke thanked the old man and hurried out of the forest, his heart filled with a strange mix of excitement and fear. When he returned home, Ola and the children were waiting for him. He showed them the pouch of gold coins, and their eyes widened in disbelief. "Dyke, is this real?" Ola asked, holding one of the gold coins in her hand. "Yes, it's real," Dyke replied, hugging his family tightly. "The gods have blessed us." That night, they celebrated with joy and hope, believing that their lives were about to change for the better. Little did they know, the true cost of Dyke's choice was yet to be revealed. In the days that followed the ritual, Dyke's life began to change dramatically. His once humble home was soon filled with wealth beyond his wildest dreams. Gold coins, fine clothes, and beautiful ornaments adorned their modest house. Dyke, who had once been known as the poorest man in Obabi, was now one of the wealthiest. The villagers were astounded by his sudden fortune. Everywhere Dyke went, people whispered about him. How did Dyke become so rich overnight, they wondered. Some speculated that he had found a hidden treasure, while others believed he had been blessed by the gods. His old friends, who had once shunned him because of his poverty, now flocked to his side. They praised him, invited him to their homes, and treated him with the respect they had previously denied him. But Dyke remembered how they had treated him before, and he was cautious in his dealings with them. At home, his family enjoyed their newfound wealth. His children wore fine clothes, and they no longer worried about where their next meal would come from. But despite the happiness their riches brought, Ola couldn't shake her concern. Dyke, I am happy that we have all these things now, she said one evening, but I am worried. How did this happen so quickly? Where did all this money come from? Dyke looked into her eyes and replied, the gods have blessed us, my love. They have seen our struggles and rewarded us. You don't need to worry. Ola sighed, still feeling a shadow of doubt in her heart. I trust you, Dyke, but please be careful. Sometimes great wealth can bring great trouble. Dyke nodded, understanding her concerns, but reassured her, we have worked hard for this moment. Now is our time to enjoy these blessings. Weeks turned into months, and Dyke's wealth continued to grow. He invested in land, bought livestock, and even started his own farm. The villagers' curiosity only deepened, but Dyke kept the secret of his wealth to himself. Even though he enjoyed the riches, a part of him longed for the simple, honest days before the ritual. He missed the peace that came from hard work and quiet life. But Dyke's world came crashing down one evening when a messenger arrived at his house. The old man from the forest had sent word Dyke was to meet him again. The message was brief and ominous, and dread settled deep in Dyke's heart. He knew that this meeting could only mean one thing, the price for his wealth was about to be demanded. The next morning, Dyke made his way back to the forest, his heart filled with dread. He knew this was no ordinary summons. As he approached the old man's hut, the trees seemed to close in around him, their branches whispering in the wind. When he arrived, the old man was already waiting, his face as grim as Dyke had feared. Dyke, the old man said in a low, somber voice, the time has come for you to pay the price for your wealth. Dyke's heart sank. What kind of price? He asked, his voice trembling with fear. The old man fixed him with a piercing gaze. The gods demand a sacrifice, he said. You must sacrifice your only daughter, Ada. The words hit Dyke like a blow. No, he gasped, staggering backward. Not Ada. She is my only daughter. I cannot do this. But the old man's expression didn't change. If you do not fulfill the God's demand, you will lose everything, the wealth, your sanity, even your life. The gods will take back their blessings, and you will be left with nothing. Dyke's mind whirled in despair. The thought of losing Ada was unbearable. She was the light of his life, kind, gentle, and loved by everyone in the village. He couldn't imagine sacrificing her. There must be another way. Dyke pleaded, his voice shaking. Please, I'll do anything else. But the old man shook his head. There is no other way. You have 7 days to make your decision. If you do not sacrifice Ada, the gods will take her themselves, and you will suffer the consequences. Dyke returned home, his mind a storm of fear and sorrow. He couldn't tell Ola what the old man had demanded. The thought of sharing such a burden with her was too much to bear. For days, Dyke wrestled with the decision. How could he sacrifice his daughter to keep the wealth? Yet the fear of losing everything, his wealth, his sanity, his family's future, gnawed at him. As the days passed, Dyke watched Ada play in the yard, her laughter filling the air with innocence and joy. Every time he looked at her, the weight of his terrible decision pressed down on him. She's my only daughter, Dyke thought, his heart aching. But if I don't do it, I lose everything. He tried to push the thought out of his mind, but the old man's voice echoed in his head, 7 days, or the gods will take her themselves. On the 5th day, Dyke made the unthinkable decision. With his heart heavy with sorrow, he prepared to go through with the ritual. He mixed a special drink and prepared the black oil, just as the old man had instructed. As he did so, his hands shook, and his soul felt crushed by the weight of what he was about to do. This is for the family's future, he whispered to himself, though the words felt hollow. That evening, Dyke found Ada playing in the yard. Ada, come here, he called softly. She ran to him, smiling, her eyes full of trust. Drink this, my dear, Dyke said, handing her the cup. And use this oil on your skin. It's important. Ada hesitated, but she trusted her father completely. Okay, father, she said, drinking the potion and rubbing the oil on her skin as instructed. Moments later, the potion took effect, and Ada fell unconscious. Dyke's heart shattered as he carried his daughter to the forest. Each step felt like a weight pulling him deeper into despair. When he reached the clearing, the old man was waiting. Dyke gently laid Ada on the ground, her face peaceful, unaware of the horror that was about to unfold. Tears streamed down Dyke's face as he prepared to complete the ritual. He knelt beside her, his hands shaking. "I'm so sorry, Ada," he whispered, his voice breaking. Just as he was about to proceed, a piercing scream filled the air. "Dyke, no." The voice belonged to Ola. She had followed Dyke, suspecting something was terribly wrong. Her scream echoed through the forest, and the villagers, awakened by the noise, rushed toward the clearing with their torches. They found Dyke kneeling over Ada's still body. The villagers restrained him as Ola ran to Ada, tears streaming down her face. "What have you done, Dyke?" she cried, cradling their daughter. The villagers quickly carried Ada to the village herbalist, hoping to undo whatever had been done to her. Dyke was left behind, his heart broken, overwhelmed by the enormity of what he had almost done. The villagers tied him up and took him back to the village, their faces filled with anger and sorrow. "Dyke must face justice," one of the elders declared. "We will take him to the king." Bound and surrounded by the villagers, Dyke was led to the king's palace, his head hung low with guilt and shame. In the grand hall of the palace, the king sat on his throne, his face stern and disappointed. The villagers explained what had transpired, and the king's gaze fell upon Dyke. "Is this true, Dyke?" the king asked, his voice heavy with judgment. Dyke, weakened by the emotional and spiritual toll of his actions, fell to his knees and confessed. "Yes, my king. It is true. I was manipulated by Chief Norfa. He promised me wealth in exchange for a ritual, but I didn't know it would come to this." The king's eyes narrowed. "Chief Norfa, explain yourself." But when the guards searched for Chief Norfa, they discovered that he had already fled the village. He had vanished without a trace, leaving Dyke to face the consequences of his actions alone. "Dyke," the king said sternly, "you have committed a grave sin. But since your daughter's life was spared, thanks to your wife's bravery, and you were manipulated into this dark path, your punishment will be severe, but your life will be spared. You will spend the rest of your days in prison, where your wife and children may visit you. But you will work to atone for your actions." Dyke bowed his head in shame and whispered, "Thank you, my king," tears streaming down his face. He had lost everything, the wealth, the respect of his village, and the love of his family, all because of his choices. The villagers dispersed, their hearts heavy with the weight of what had happened. Ola returned to the herbalist's hut, where Ada was slowly recovering from the effects of the potion. She sat beside her daughter, tears falling silently as she tried to come to terms with what her husband had almost done. Though their family was broken, she clung to the hope that they might one day heal. As Dyke was led to his prison cell, he felt the full weight of his decisions crushing him. He had been driven by greed, tempted by the promise of easy wealth, and it had cost him everything. The love and happiness of his family, once his greatest treasure, had been shattered by his own hands. In the quiet of his cell, Dyke vowed to spend the rest of his life atoning for his sins, hoping that one day his family would find it in their hearts to forgive him. Dyke's tale spread throughout the village of Obabi, serving as a powerful reminder of the dangers of greed and the true meaning of wealth. Though he lived out the rest of his days in captivity, Dyke found some measure of peace in knowing that his family had been spared. The love and integrity that he had once taken for granted were far greater treasures than any amount of gold.
I hope you enjoyed the tale. If so, please like the video, comment, share it with your family and friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell for more enchanting tales like this one. Goodbye.